like to call to order the Board of Finance budget workshop for March 23rd, 2023. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
And the motion to accept the agenda. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first up is Senior Center. Hi.
So, if you don't know who I am, I'm Joanne Ewing, at the Senior Center. I want to thank you for this opportunity to update you on what's going on at the Senior Center. We continue to be a very active, center. I'm happy to say that, folks are still coming in. We have new residents or folks that are not familiar with the center activities and exploring what we offer to them. This year, some of our accomplishments were continue to provide a safe environment for older adults so they could meet and socialize with one another. We encourage people to attend programs in a staggered format, again, just for the safety of numbers. We've collaborated with Chatham Health District to establish protocols for the safe environment and facilitated signups for booster clinics and flu clinics with Chatham Health. Promoted many outdoor programs to ease people's comfort level and to encourage participation. During COVID, obviously, social isolation has been a even bigger issue. Being home and whatnot, and some of the things that we had done the first year was to go virtual, and a lot of our programs now are still virtual and in person. So it actually takes a little more staffing to be able to do that, so that we have people monitoring the virtual part. We continue to provide energy assistance or provide assistance applying for the Connecticut Energy Assistance Program and do the follow-up. And this heating season, it's been quite a year in regards to, I guess, so many applications that they weren't expecting. One due to the costs of fuel, and also the costs of fuel and the many applications that were applied. This year, the state went with allowing people also to apply online, so they weren't expecting the explosion of responses with that. In 2022, we moved into offering meals up from 2 days a week to 5 days a week, and that's worked out pretty well. Also started providing volunteer drivers from the center to deliver the Meals on Wheels. We started with, I would say, 8 volunteers, and I would say we're up to about 15 right now. As you know, we have some folks that have the regular schedules where they deliver, but they may not be able to make it on a day, so we need substitutes to do that. So that's been really a very successful program. The other thing that we're doing now that we weren't doing during 2019, 2020, 2021 is utilizing volunteers at our desk to answer phones. With our present staffing structure, it's very difficult to run the programs and answer phones and answer people's questions as they come into the center. We also have continued with virtual travel programs and the programs that we normally have, like exercise programs like yoga and Tai Chi. Tai Chi is still virtual. Yoga we do actually in this room, also virtual, because there's some people that still are not comfortable in mixing with folks. So our older adults are clearly showing the need to become involved in social activity. And what I'm seeing is more people are coming to the center looking to see what we're offering and how they can get involved. I'm also seeing a different kind of involvement in regards to with the volunteering in different ways, such as programs that they want to see that we don't offer. And they're saying, okay, we'll help run it. And so I see that as a very positive thing as well. I can see that being developed. The seniors or older adults see the value of the center and the programs that are offered. Some, and like I said, some are volunteering to set up for the programs, which is wonderful. So the challenge in which talked about is the need for more staffing. And or I would like to rephrase that to make, I have a position that's an assistant to the director position that is a part-time job. I have 2 people doing that job. I've had 2 people doing that job in part-time capacity. So one comes in on Monday and leaves on Wednesday. The other picks up where she leaves off on Wednesday and then finishes her week on Fridays. And it's real difficult to provide a continuity to the program that we're offering and keeping the communication level up in regards to that. And so I would like to be able to explore other opportunities in regards to funding sources to be able to augment some of the services that we need, such as social services. I see, or social work, I see that that's going to be an issue as people have the people coming in have a variety of issues that need to be dealt with, and my staff at the present time, and myself included, are not qualified to really address those things, but that's an ongoing concern. So you'll see within my budget that's where my change for our increase is mostly in the staff line item, and again trying to put this one position that should have been one position from the very beginning, but now combine it so that we have that.
Any questions?
Just one on other purchase services, an increase of $1,000 over previous years. What is that increase?
It's for entertainment and like volunteer recognition and those kinds of activities. Instructors is the other thing. Like if we have one of the newer programs that we have offered is a cooking demonstration, and those all come when you have the instructors come in. They all come with a fee.
Okay.
I see you have a driver,
Yes.
part-time driver.
Yes.
How many hours a week and what times a day does he work?
19 and a half, and right now it's 9:30 to 1:30. And we're working out that schedule as we speak and trying to figure out. I've never had a driver for a consistent 19 and a half hours. I've had up per diem up to 10 hours. So the difference is I have somebody there that's available to provide a regular transportation route to people like to get to the senior center. And before we would have recreational trips and that might be after hours, or they just do Good Speed is an example of one of those kind of trips, or going to Walmart is another trip that people like to go. And we used to have mystery trips where, sort of looking in that way. But what I'm finding right now is I wanted to see how many people would start to come to the senior center whether for lunches or activities, if the transportation is available. And it's brand new, you have to understand. So right now, in the last 2 weeks, I think we went from 4 people using the bus system, and now we're up to about 9 or 10, as people are becoming more aware of it. The medical trips cause a problem because they're not part of that regular trip. And we haven't, so people are coming to the senior center. Some want to come at 9, some want to come at 10, some want to come at 11. And so we're trying to merge that and say, okay, come at 10 or come at 10:30. So that we can have some blocks of time for the local medical trips. Because there's not enough hours to be able to meet all those needs.
Do you have your van yet?
No,
How many passengers will it be?
12.
Do you think there'd be any possibility to the superintendent using your van? First thing in the morning and then again later in the afternoon?
I mean, if there isn't anything scheduled, you know, we would I would think most activities that we would go to would be like leaving at 9.
Most what? I'm sorry.
Most activities that we would leave around 9 and be back by 3. So I don't know if that would meet their.
All right,
uh,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, go ahead.
There was a problem getting to Marlboro for medical appointments for seniors. Has that been worked out with, the transit people in Middletown or wherever it was? I know it was
Yes,
because Marlboro's Hartford
correct,
County,
correct.
there's a problem there, and I think that's something that's gotta be fixed. It's not fixed already, and I'm sure you work.
Yeah, I think there was some miscommunication with some of the residents. And so what came back was, and nobody knew that that's where it was coming back, that it was not, that we couldn't go to Marlboro.
Yeah.
And in actuality, Matt Trent to Marlboro, but they'll only go to the medical center. So they won't go to podiatrist. What's that?
They won't go to Big Y for shopping.
Yeah, or they won't go to the podiatrist that isn't affiliated with Middlesex. And they're a mile away, so that's an issue.
But that was a big problem, and it sounds like it's fixed. So
Yeah,
that's great.
and the other thing is the people in the docks in Marlboro that people can't get to, could feasibly get to with our van.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay.
I think I'm doing transportation too,
Yes,
or is it Eric?
No, you-
Okay. And so what's happening with Matt Transit up until this month, since COVID started, the transportation fares were all waived. And starting April 1st, they are not waived, and so people will be responsible for paying for their rides. That's bad news. And it's still accurate in regards to $3.50 per ride. The good news is that Matt Transit has a grant from Senior Resources to pay for seniors over 60 to ride the bus for free. So it's just an it's not even an it's a Form 5, which is a registration form that we use for our lunch program. So they could use that as they fill it out, and then they can come to the senior center. They still have to call, you know, for their ride. If they want to go down to Old Saybrook, they could do that for free. So that's a new and exciting wrinkle. I have a meeting at the end of April in regards to share this information with the residents at the housing authority Because I think they had some training maybe about 6 months ago from Matt Transit, but they talked about public transportation, and so what they were told, no, we couldn't come into Chatham Acres, we couldn't go into Bellwood. You have to go out to 66. And so that's true, if you want to go on the fixed route on the big bus. So now I'll go back and say, but we do have a dial-a-ride bus, and this is the procedure that you need.
No, thank you.
Move on to community services.
That, I can answer that. That's the sort of use fee that we pay for the.
I think that's it. Now you can put on anything. Eric?
Thank you very much. I'm Eric Rosenberg, the new chair of the Commission on Aging for the last 3 months. And to set the background, we've started out with a bang here in terms of having 3 new members and a new chair, strategic planning, and finally take on a number of the projects that were identified in the senior survey done 1.5 years ago. So we've been working on housing, transportation, and health and wellness issues. And just a very quick recap, we've helped out with getting better administration from the state for the energy assistance program that Joanne is having difficulty getting proper state responsiveness. We've set up an EDU and home renovations talk. You may have seen posters around town. This is in answer to requests from seniors for more information about those subjects. We've been meeting monthly for the last 3 months with the heads of several of the town departments in order to coordinate offerings and communications to seniors. And we have a group on the COA now that really wants to accomplish things. So I think you'll see a lot more in the near future. In terms of the budget, when I took a look through, I eliminated the $100 staff travel in my ask. I wanted to get $200 of newspaper advertising because we do have programs that we will be offering. We do have $329 that was shifted through cost accounting from a different budget to the Commission on Aging for the minutes production and distribution. So that's not really an ask for the committee or an extra cost to the town, obviously. There is one new request that we have. It is essential for us to develop a database of all of the seniors in our town in terms of their preferred means of communication, whether that's email or regular mail. We want to find the oldest old and those in most need. We do not have a good way to find them and do that. We do want to do it in the most efficient, cost-effective way. And we're willing to put in actually a lot of volunteer time to cull the list and make the number of addresses that we mail to as small as possible. This project is strongly supported by the Parks and Rec, Chatham Health, the library, the senior center, all of whom depend on a good database of preferred communications to our seniors. What we want to do is mail them a piece that asks them which way they want to be reached and has opt-ins for seeing at this point 3 different categories of information that they may or may not want to receive. This mailing, we start with 2,180 citizens who are 65 years or over. That's the Census Bureau's best guesstimate of how many seniors are in town. We can reduce that to, I think, 908 pieces of mail going out by doing several things. Mr. Joke has already been very helpful in merging databases from the senior center's email list and mail list with the registrar of voters list of all voters who are 65 years or older. There are ways that we can eliminate redundancies and take two people with the same last names at the same address and merge them into a single mailing. So I think we can get down to 908 pieces of mail at $1.30 a piece as the best estimate now. And that would be $1,180 for the mailing. That's contained within this communication budget. It is a reduction from what I had initially thought, which was 1,322 down to 1,180. So my new total request would be, instead of 2,951, would be 2,809, a $142 reduction from what I was asking. And of that 2,809, please remember that 329 is a cost accounting shift. It's not actually extra expenditure by our committee. One more piece I wanted to say is that we have already written Mr. Cox and Mr. Jilka and the town council as a commission on aging unanimously supporting the senior center budget ask, and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No, I think you gave us the detail that we probably would have asked for.
So you reduced that line from for newspaper, let's see, communications,
Yes,
1,000, from 1,332 to 1,108,
1,180.
80. Okay.
Yeah. So the 2024 budget ask, the prior column would be reduced from 1,422 down to 1,280.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just thank you for the diligence of going through your budget and really taking a look at everywhere you can save in this case, a few bucks.
You're very welcome. Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is registrar election.
Hi, I'm Terry Latimer, Lori Wilcox. This year, we have pretty much maintained the budget from last year. Was, a little bit of a reduction. Main thing is we only need one new computer this year, than the two last year. Costs, your printing costs for the ballots are going up, which is why we're having the other purchase services go up.
Terry?
Yes.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
You can move that mic a little closer to you if you want.
Thank you.
Okay, as I said, our budget this year is not changing by much. The main increase is other purchase services. The cost of printing ballots has gone up. So that's the main increase. The main thing that's not in our budget is just to give everyone a heads up that this year the state is working on opening it up to early voting. The last news I heard that one of the committees came out was going to be 10 days prior to the election from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. We don't know what that's going to mean for us as far as hiring, staffing. We don't know if it's going to be this year or next year.
Well, it's not gonna be next year because it's presidential. They said that all along. First they said 25, and then all of a sudden, the last couple of weeks, they said, oops, changed their mind.
So we're not sure where it's gonna start and exactly how that's gonna impact our staffing. And that will be the main driver of any changes going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we're on an annual stipend, but our deputies are on hourly, so. You know, we'll probably have them covering some of the hours, and that's where the unknown expenses come in.
Other purchase services is the poll workers.
Yes, poll workers and cluster printing. Printing and buying, it's the.
Well, that's up above.
Card reprogramming.
Yes, they went up in prices for LHS, went up in prices for cards for the machine.
Yeah, the tabulator cards.
Oh,
And in fact, they're starting finally to look at replacing the tabulators that are hanging on by a wing and a thread. We were lucky for the primary that was so hot. We were in air conditioning, but there were several towns that actually had to use the side of the ballot box to just have people drop it in, kept another tabulator in an air conditioned area because the machines were literally melting. There's rubber plastic parts in there that were melting. And they're beyond end of life, so that won't happen this year, but you'll probably hear some kind of chat about it.
So the building maintenance and repair, is that part of the tabulator or what is that?
Yeah, well, we do have an annual contract on the tabulator, so yeah.
Okay.
yeah, they come out every year and clean the machines,
Oh, I know.
update them. And that's gone up in price a little bit.
Okay. Next up is arts and culture.
Hello, I am Melissa Piazio with the Arts and Culture Commission, and this is Rebecca Tennell, who's giving me some moral support. We had a very successful year in arts and culture. We appointed reappointed a new poet laureate. We haven't had one. We had one years and years ago and then none. And now we have appointed Stan Lynn, who is a local poet. And we're still sort of defining his role and what he's doing. He did perform publicly a few times in 2022. And he is trying to work with the East Hampton Middle School to create some sort of collaboration with poetry. But they've been very busy in the school system to try and add something new. So that's in the works, but I'm not sure that's going to happen this year. We hosted a free community garden tour and plein air painting event, which featured 6 community and local gardens. People could visit the gardens for free and walk around and just enjoy nature that way. And we also had 5 local artists that showed up and painted live at some of the different gardens. So that was a really successful event, and we're going to do that again this year. We collected for the food bank during that event, so everybody that came to the garden tour was asked to bring a donation for the food bank. And one of the community gardens was the food bank community garden, so they could see exactly who they were donating to at that garden. During that event, we also purchased some promotional posters and the ad in the River East to try and promote that event as much as we could. We distributed 2 grants of $500 each. One went to a Boy Scout who was working on his Eagle Scout project up at the Seamster Park, and he put up a story walk. So you walk from placard to placard, and it includes a story from a storybook. And after that first installation, he worked with the public library to install a second book now. So that's going to be a permanent exhibit there. We also gave a second grant to Stacy Gibson, who is a preschool teacher in town, and we helped to give her money so that her students could take a trip to the Connecticut Science Center. We also hold our student art award program. We go to the all district show and we select a piece of artwork from each school. Then we present each student that is awarded, is selected with engraved Bevan Bell, which we purchased from Divine Jewelers because we try to keep it local. And so the student gets the bell and they get their artwork exhibited for mostly the summer right down here outside of the that office. And then they get their artwork back at the end of the year. We also pay for our Arts and Culture Commission website, which is www.artsforeasthamptonct.org. And the fees for that went up a little bit to $230 last year, which was unexpected, but we were able to cover that. Normally we do a capstone project grant every year. And last year in 2022, we didn't have any applicants. For whatever reason, we didn't have applicants for that. So I'll tell you what we did with that money in just a minute. We also have a East Hampton Art Purchase Award. We attend the East Hampton Art Association Art Show, which is usually held in the summertime, and we pick out a piece of artwork that is either created by an East Hampton artist or depicts an East Hampton scene. And then we donate that piece of artwork to a local town-owned building, so that we can give artists support and also give the community the chance to enjoy some artwork created locally. That has not been held in the last 2 years. So we used some of that money in a different way in 2022, which I'll tell you about in a minute. We supported the East Hampton High School Theater Group by purchasing ad space in their playbill. And then with some of the money from the Art Purchase Award, we gave a one-time monetary gift to the Joseph Goffhouse Concert Series. We also gave a one-time gift to the East Hampton Public School Community Garden at Memorial School, which was a new initiative. They had come to us through our grant program, and we had selected someone else. So with the extra money that we had not used, we were able to give them money toward their garden for some educational programs related to the garden. They had a nice reception when the garden opened, and we got to go up and see all the things that they're growing, and they're using some of the food in their cafeteria, and they're doing educational and art programs. So I just wanted to remind you that most of the spending that we have in our commission happens in the spring. So it doesn't look like we've spent much yet because all of our programs come around in the springtime. So our goals for 2023-24 are to host an art reception, to sort of have a discussion and thank you to the gardeners and painters that participated in our tour last year, and to plan for this year's event, which we hope to have in July. We offered 2 grant opportunities to local art organizations, and we're doing that right now. We're taking applications now. We offered 2 capstone grant opportunities, and we've awarded those already. One was to senior Jewel Miranda, East Hampton High School senior, and she is creating a nonprofit to help students with anxiety. And the second grant was awarded to Ishani Karkun and Kira Rolanoff, who will be hosting a tennis clinic on March 25th and 26th for young students. They're going to hold that at the high school tennis courts. So the grant will go to them to help them buy supplies, tennis balls and rackets, and healthy snacks. We plan to fund the Student Art Award program again this year and buy bells and have that exhibit for them. They really seem to like that program a lot. The student all district show is next Tuesday. So if you have any time off, it's a fantastic show. We'll be there picking art. We plan to purchase promotional posters and new signage to help promote the garden and clean air painting event, which is why we asked for a little bit more this year, because last year we ended up making homemade signs and sticking them in front of each of the garden sites. And this way, if we have some more eye-catching signs, that will help people find the location better. We hope to have the Art Purchase Award program this year. We're waiting to find out if the East Hampton Art Association is going to hold the show. We should know that within a month or so. This hasn't happened in 2 years, so if we find that this is not going to happen this year, we may scratch that from our initiatives for a while, or find some other way to get artists to bring us their art so we can consider buying one of them. We'll continue to support local theater groups by providing advertising in their playbill. And we're going to work with the poet laureate to try and see whether we can come up with more opportunities for him to perform. And we're going to continue to maintain our website.
Questions?
Then I'm on.
We're small. There's 5 of us on the board, and there's really supposed to be 9, but we really have a hard time getting people to volunteer their time with us. It's really a great commission, pretty low key. We get along and we accomplish a lot with little.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? All right. Thank you.
There's public health. Right?
Hello, I'm Tim Kellogg, the Library Director at East Hampton Public Library. For 125 years, the library has served to connect people, information, and ideas to enrich lives and the shared community. This is done through consistently growing programs, offerings, and attendance, blending around 100,000 items annually, and providing daily technology and reference assistance, among other things. On the operations side of things, the library is open 51 hours a week, Monday through Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., Thursday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. During those hours, the library hosts over 40 monthly programs for 900 attendees. We circulate over 8,500 items monthly for our 1,700 borrowers a month. We have over 7,000 Wi-Fi access sessions annually, and over 3,000 computer uses inside the building every month. Those are 2 separate things. The library is staffed by 13 individuals, including myself. The staff roughly serves about 16,400 hours every year. That's 4 full-time staff and 9 part-time staff. Some of the highlights of what the library has done include annual traditions like the Jingle Bell Parade event that we partner with other town departments on, the summer reading program, which hosts large-scale events for hundreds of town residents, including our kickoff event that is going to be on June 23rd and our closing event on August 18th. Both of those, between those 2 events, will probably see 1,000 people. And that's just 2 events. We've also continued to have quite successful self-directed activities and take and makes, which were a pandemic initiative when people couldn't come into the library. And due to that success, we've needed to add more to the budget because they are in constant demand. Unlike expectations that they would drop off after people were able to come back into the library. Instead, people have continued to want those services. So some of the key points for the library for the proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget. Personnel is coming in at a contracted anticipated 3% increase. There are several flat costs, which include our conferences and meetings and staff travel for professional development. Library programs, which is the other purchased services line, library collections, which is books and periodicals, and computer equipment, all of which were budgeted at the same rate as the current fiscal year. And the communications line was adjusted by $63 for website domain services, which was previously covered by another line. Increases for the proposed budget include 1% or $194 for digital media services, which includes all platform fees for databases, electronic materials, such as ebooks and e-audiobooks, events management, public computer safety and public computer privacy, marketing platforms, and a hotspot lending service, which provides Wi-Fi access to patrons who borrow the hotspots. 3% increase, that's $810 for our rental fee, which is our contractual obligation for the Lion Libraries Consortium, which provides considerably more than that 3% increase to what we do. The library would not function without being a part of the consortium model. That's how we get materials to and from other libraries. We have additional technology support from the Lion Libraries staff that come in to help work on our public computers whenever there's a maintenance issue. They also provide website assistance and maintenance for that, among other things. We also have a $1,000 increase for the supply line, and I mentioned that that is largely due to the success of successful programs like our Tick and Make activities, which are primarily materials driven, and that's a result of rising costs and inflation, not so much an addition of services. It's just to continue to pay for what we're already doing. And also a $175 increase to the dues and fees lines for the addition of membership to the Fairfield Library Administrators Group, which primarily helps me as your library director to cultivate new ideas and relationships with other libraries in the state of Connecticut. Overall, the proposed library budget increase is 2.7% from the current year, with a dollar difference of $15,645. This budget allows the library to prioritize people, build community, and promote learning. Any questions?
Is the reason the part-time salaries, the 3% is on?
The raise in part-time salaries is $1 an hour per person, and that's to continue to meet the minimum wage requirements.
Any further questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is animal control.
Go, if that's okay.
What's that?
Lake Commission go, that's all right.
Oh, sure.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Great seeing you all again. You all hear me all right? Yeah, no. All right, my name is Jeremy Hall. I'm the Park and Rec Director, but I'm also the advisor to the Conservation Lake Commission. I do have the chairman of the Conservation Lake Commission, Chuck Yankovic, with us. So my thought here is I would kind of get started, talk a little bit, and I'll have Chuck jump in as well to give some sort of an overview of some of the programs we're offering as well. So what I'll start out talking about is just sort of a year in review, everything we've been doing. The commission has been very, very active in everything, but mostly Lake Commission, Lake Pocono matters. We have a lot of, BMPs, which are called best management practices, that are going on around the lake right now to help with water quality control. Currently, we have 7 projects going on. Christopher Brook we purchased that property last year, if you guys all remember that process. Now we have projects going into Christopher Brook that are going to help alleviate some of the nutrient runoff into Lake Pocono. It's one of our biggest tributaries in the lake, and we want to make sure we capture as many nutrients as we can in that area. If you guys have specifics and you want to know exactly what we're doing in these areas, please, you can elaborate or ask those questions after, and we'll go into some details. But for the sake of time, I want to just make sure we kind of hit on all the spots. Edgemere Pump House, which is behind the Edgemere Condominium Complex, it is a very active and high flowing stream bank, essentially, that takes water from Skyline and Clark Hill and eventually makes its way to Christopher Brook and then dumps it into Lake Pocono. So we're going to be doing some work back there. Most of that work has to do with level spreaders and live staking along the eroded bank side. We're also doing work located at Sears Park. We're finally finishing the work there that we've been working on for many years. Sears Park is for the town's sake, it's our largest parcel of land that the town owns right along the lake. So we're finishing up with some riprap swales. We've done some drainage along our paved portion of the parking, the walkway that will direct it into the rain garden. So we'll be finishing up that work, and it will also help, with the erosion of the sand during a large rain event as well. We're also we did some work up off Bay Road, which is located at the Middlesex Land Trust property. We got permission for them to provide some actual plants up there that are natural to this area that'll help take in some of the nutrients before flowing into Fawn Brook and then eventually making its way into the lake. We also are doing some work at Brookhaven. Brookhaven is a beach association on Park Road. We have some constant problems with water coming off 66 at a high volume. We're hoping to catch that water and trap it into riprap swales before discharging it into Lake Pocono. Excuse me. And then we have Spellman Point is our last location. If you forget any, let me know, but Spellman Point is our last location. Off of Spellman Point, there's a current culvert that we own, the town owns, that is no longer working properly. But what we've done is acquired an easement from the landowner that's there. We're going to be building a detention basin up top to capture that stormwater coming off Spellman Point. Releasing it into the detention basin before, allowing it to clean the nutrients before it discharges into the lake. Those are the main projects that we are currently. No, that was not on the list this year. That's next year. Those are the current projects that are going on as we speak. It's taken about 2 years with DEP to get the funding and work through these projects. 3 of those projects are capital funded. Brookhaven, Sears Park, and Spellman Point are being funded out of the capital reserve account that you guys see in front of you. That account currently has about $151,000 in there. We will exhaust the majority of that with these projects. These projects are not cheap by any means. They are very expensive when you start to get into the construction phase and you start to buy materials. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. One of the things I want to make you all aware of is we are still actively pursuing 319 grant funds, and we are still using those grant funds toward the high profile or high probability projects that we're trying to complete within the watershed based on the 319 watershed plan. And that's still out on the public website. You guys can certainly view that as you want to, but those projects are being taken from there based on the priority level, and we're trying to sort of match it up with the funding that we have available. So we just completed another round of grant funding. I submitted that last month, 2 weeks ago, actually, I mean, quite a month. And those projects will include funding for Wells Avenue, funding of Old Clark Hill Road, Lake Vista Condominium Detention Pond, the Lakewood Road, and West Point Road, and the Edgemere condominiums off Lake Road, trying to do some work there as well. We've currently, that whole entire proposal that we've set up and looked for funding will come in. We'll come in at around $240,000 for that funding. My plan is to hopefully get that funding, and that really is going to keep us going into the next 2 years for lake projects. We are asking for $40,000 in the capital reserve fund this year. That is for the water quality infrastructure. That will continue to hopefully add to the projects. We are looking to do some smaller projects, but really pack a big hit for us. All of our coming off of Lake Road and surrounding areas that are sort of right up to the lake. Our catch basins tend to go right into the lake with really no buffer zones in between. So what we're going to try to do is capture as much as we can before it discharges with riprap at the end of those storm drains. We'll be working with Public Works to try to find those areas where we can do that before discharge. Like Edgemere is a perfect example of one we are going to be doing that too, and we'll get grant funds for as well. That's sort of the basis of the budget and what we've been doing. I'm going to turn it over to Chuck. He'll talk a little bit about, the Lake Smart program that we've been doing and some of the other great in-lake treatments that we currently are working on.
Okay. Basically, we're doing a lot of work on the projects Jeremy mentioned there, and the whole concept behind them that you're not aware is to slow water down, allow it to settle, allow the nutrients to settle out of the water before they get into the lake. And basically, what we're trying to go after is phosphorus and nitrogen, because those are the two elements that feed the algae in the lake. So there's no silver bullet to do this. It's a whole series of small incremental steps. So we've tried to identify them, prioritize them based on the impact that it's going to make, how much phosphorus is this particular place putting into the lake, and then accessibility. One of the big problems we have is the lake is completely developed around, and it's a lot of small properties. So anytime we go to try and do something, you got to get multiple landowners involved to get permissions and right-of-ways, and it's just a painfully slow process. The other thing that hurts us quite a bit is the geography. We have certain places like the east side of the bay. You mentioned the Brookhaven project. The problem is it's a cliff that goes right down to the lake. And it's really hard to slow the water down and get the nutrients out of it. So anyway, we do have a project program going. You may have seen a billboard sign up by Stop and Shop and McDonald's there called Lake Smart. We're encouraging and incentivizing landowners around the lake to do things that's going to help reduce their individual contribution to the lake. And that's been pretty successful so far. We've got, I think we've done a dozen landowners, and we try and publicize it and get it going. Those are generally low impact thing. Friends of Lake Pocatapog is helping out with that. They're doing the incentivizing. So someone who has to buy some materials, do something to improve their property and reduce runoff can get reimbursed for $150 from the Friends of Lake Pocatapog. So baby steps, as I said. The aquatics, the big expenditure the town did a couple of years ago, now 3 years ago, was the addition of the aeration system. And we're continuing to run that, fine tune it in terms of when to turn it on, how long to run it. And hopefully make that more effective and economical, get the most bang for it. So that'll continue this year. One of the big items in our budget, you'll see electricity in there, and that's electricity that's running the aeration system is the number on that. The other big part of our budget is the professional technical services, and that's hiring the lake expert consultants from near Northeast Aquatic Research Company that advises us on issues regarding the lake, clarification, nutrient loading, et cetera. They also do the monitoring, measuring the nutrients and the quality of the lake water, which we need to support to get all these grants. None of the grants come without them asking for, okay, what's the, what data do you have in terms of the lake? And NEAR provides that for us. So that's a kind of a vital underpinning of our projects.
All right. We do have, last year, we treated with copper sulfate for the first time, really ever.
Yeah.
We did alum many years ago, but copper sulfate was a success last year. When we started to notice at the time when we added the copper sulfate to half the lake, that about a week before, we were starting to see blooms start to form. When the copper sulfate was added, you could quickly see a difference. The lake became clear, almost clear, you know, and it really kept it clean. I should say clear for the rest of the year, right into September. And then we started to see some blooms once that wore off. Late October or mid-October, we started to see blooms again. But it was successful and it did work for the swim period for the summer. This year, there is another option that we're looking into. We haven't got into the full details with the town council or the Board of Finance yet, but it's called Lake Guard Oxy, which is a peroxide solution. It's very similar to a Boslock type of thing where it sort of binds with the blue-green algae and drops it to the bottom. So we are exploring this in a little bit more detail. And as we kind of get into it, we'll send information out so that you're all aware of it. The cost is relatively the same as a copper sulfate treatment, which is about $18,000 for an entire lake. So we are looking at different options as we progress through the process this year. Lake Commission has been very busy with all this. So
We have an active program to bring in experts from different companies. If we hear about a new product that maybe has worked someplace else in the country, we'll get somebody to come in and talk to us about it, see if it's got an application for us. So we're always looking for new things. I'm really excited about this Lake Guard product because it's really non-toxic. It's better than what else has been out in the market. So, but it's not approved yet by the DEP in Connecticut. So we have a ways to go on that, but potentially that could be a real game changer for us.
and we do carry a contract currently for bioblast treatments. We sort of we allow for 4 treatments a year within our contract. There is budgeted money for that. It's already set aside. So anytime we use something like a copper sulfate or another product, we're taking away from the bioblast treatments. We're just taking 2 instead of 4, so that we can counter that out. There's no additional fees added to or funds added to our account, Lake Commission account. So that, in a nutshell, is really what we've been up to. We continue to push forward and try to clean up Lake Pocatapog. I think we've done some good work in the last couple of years to really get us to the point where we were last summer. The big thing is let's just hope we don't have a lot of rain in that summer because all of that just washes it. So the commission has done a great job. We've got some great partnerships out there and we're eager to continue to work on into this for this year. With that, I'll take some questions or we'll take some questions.
When do you anticipate getting notification on the grants?
The end of April.
Yes.
Rich, I caught you.
My apologies.
Any questions? Lana?
The in-lake aeration treatment is that the 150,000, is that just
Annual,
the in-lake aeration treatments?
the annual treatment, the annual cost on that is 119.
So there's 150,000 in that line, and that
Yeah.
covers both the aeration system, the lease and maintenance of that, as well as that's where the funding is for the bioblast and the algicide treatments that, or algicide rather treatments that Jeremy was talking about.
Okay, so you're definitely doing the bioblast and,
Yes, we've been doing that every year. Last year, we only did 2 treatments. The year before we did 4. So it all depends on the conditions. And like I said, if we're using a copper sulfate or another product that we're going to be applying like. So yeah, we do plan on using that every year.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
The aeration has been in for like 3 years or so. I went to a couple of the meetings before we had that installed. And I remember that the bid or the person, the company that put it in, had to meet certain standards during I think a 10-year period.
5 years.
5-year period. I know you can't control the rain and so on, but, has he met the standards that we're paying for? And I haven't heard anything about those standards, right?
Yeah, that's a really, that's a,
Do you think that the aeration system is doing the best it can, and it was a good purchase?
wow, you really put me on the spot, Ted. I will say that I think it helps. It doesn't hurt to have that system in there. The idea of the aeration system is to provide oxygen to the dissolved oxygen into the bottom of the lake. The idea is that when there's no oxygen down low at the bottom of the lake, that's when the algae comes out of the sediment in the soils, trying to come up for food, and then it produces its algae blooms at the top of the surface. So the idea here is if you have dissolved oxygen at the bottom of the lake, it's going to keep the sediment in the soils, and it's not going to release. So the one thing that I can tell you we've had data on that's been successful is there is dissolved oxygen at the bottom of the lake now in those deep portions. So yes, in that regard, it has been successful. There are some other measures, cyanobacteria levels being lower than 90 parts per billion, which is basically the level where it becomes unsafe for swimming. Once it goes over that level. So those ones have been very inconsistent, and it's very tough to judge those levels because of, depending on who you have counting them. Counting cyanobacteria is not an easy thing to do, and it's very precise. It takes time and it takes a lot of effort. So there are inconsistencies there, that some levels are very high, some levels have been very low. So it's been very difficult to judge the cyanobacteria levels in the lake. Temperature levels as well as part of that. So those have always been fairly consistent, and the ranges are right there. In that level where Everblue Lakes needs to be considered on target.
I mean, as a non-technical measurement, basically, we've had 3 summers with the aeration. The first summer was good. I think we had a minimal lake closure for a couple of days at Sears Park. The second summer, but it was definitely improved over the previous year, which we had 4 weeks of closure. The second year, we got those giant rainstorms in June, absolute worst time of year, because that's when everybody's fertilized their lawn in the spring. And the heavy rains came and it washed in and it overwhelmed the system, both the bioblast or whatever. The third year, last year, was the best year we've had yet. So I think if you graph it out, and that's a limited time over 3 years, the performance has been there. John Tucci from Everblue Lakes, who is the one responsible for that, was very clear at the beginning. He said, this is a process. That's why he was insisting on, having a contract for several years, because he said, I can't guarantee the first year is gonna be the thing. So I'm comfortable with the fact there's been incremental progress.
One thing we do share is, and Chuck kind of nailed it on the head there, is we call it a 3-phase approach. And it's sort of been our approach from the Lake Commission from essentially day one. But it's really looking at the in-lake treatments, right? What are we doing in the lake? What are we doing outside the lake in the watershed areas? And what are we putting out for education? What are we doing to educate the public living around the lake to help clean up? And if we continue to focus on those, we will be successful. But I can tell you one thing is not going to make the lake perfect. So John Tucci's Everblue Lakes, aeration system is not the only answer. We've got to continue to do all 3 approaches and keep getting better at it as each year goes by, and we'll be successful. But we need that to make it all work. Hopefully that answers your question.
Do you know some of the hot spots of the nutrients that are going into the lake?
Yes.
And what's the biggest thing you have with that? Is that for the landowners?
Yeah, well,
I keep on thinking about Clark Hill. Clark Hill, I mean, it's really steep coming down to the lake. And do we have, catch basins and things like that that'll catch most of that runoff?
Yes.
Well, we have a bad storm. There's
Yeah.
all of my runoff.
We did some work many years ago, right above where the pump station is. We did some work up in there, created a little basin where some of that water can flow. There is another catch basin that we added. The problem is trying to catch it before it hits those catch basins, because really all those basins go right from there, wherever they pick up, and they flow right to the lake without any buffers along the way. So Old Clark Hill is a project that we're working with Public Works on. It's part of the grant application that we're applying for next year. We want to do some work to catch some nutrients coming off Old Clark Hill, which we feel is where most of it is coming from.
Old Clark Hill, it's a dirt road. It's about a half a mile up from the lake. It's a dirt road that goes off to the right. And that's just a funnel. The water comes down that dirt road, the wash. And it hits Clark Hill. Some of it gets into the basins, but not all of it. So that Old Clark Hill is one of the projects we have going to try and.
That's up the back of the mobile home. Don't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But to answer your question on the hot spots in the lake, yeah, that's part of the data we get out of near and Everblue Lake supply some of that too. But one of the big areas is O'Neill Brook. Feeds O'Neill is
Right behind Paul's.
behind Paul's and
Old Marlboro
Sandy's.
Road.
There, off Old Marlboro Road. We've got some plans in place to try and attack that. Christopher Brook was another big one, which Christopher Brook runs from Skyline down behind the Edgemere condos, circles around, comes into the Christopher Pond, which then dumps into the lake by the marina there. That was one reason why we're so happy to get that property, and we've got a project going to put work on that pond to stop it, but that's a big source coming in there. Clark Hill there's some, that's not a hot spot. Another hot spot is up at the north end of the lake, Hale Brook. So we've kind of got our eye on those, and that's what we're trying to attack in order of priority.
Christopher Brook, I used to live, on one side of that. And there used to be brook trout in there.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're still in
I
there.
don't think so.
No, they're not. I think I know why, but
Yeah, well, that pond is silted in a lot too, which doesn't help either.
okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job. You want to leave the animal control till the end? Because I think it's pretty straightforward. That's my impression. Okay, let's move on to firefighting.
Hello, how's it going? I'm the fire chief, the new one. My name is Robert Greenville, so first time we're here. So this year, we plan to continue with a lot of fundraising in-house to help things like the fireworks, which costs around $20,000. We also hope to continue with Santa runs that brings Santa to every house in the town. As you see, we have some increases in our stipend that's due to growth, which is also a great thing. So we have a lot more volunteers. We've had about 9 more in the last 3 years, which is great. So with that means obviously more training. That's why the training budget is going up as well. Just going through my notes. It's a lot bigger. Thank you. Look at that. So I talked about the stipend going up. So that stipend is an award that the firefighters get for meeting certain criteria. So because we have more members, that's why that line's going up by $10,000. That means that we've had 8 new members get that. So that's $1,250 each. So that's the 10,000 raised in that. Training, as you could imagine, it's hard to train 63 people and get them all on the same level. So we are trying to implement a online training, which will be about $5,500 extra dollars. And that's why that increase is coming. We also have a lot of increases with training through the state. Their prices are just going up because it costs more to train members and to pay trainers as well. So to send a firefighter to Fire One before they can become an interior firefighter, it's around $1,600 or so, $1,500. So it's a lot of money for one person. You'll see that I made some decreases as well across the line. We're changing our company 3 over to a propane system instead of oil, so that's why there's a decrease there. And then we just decreased a couple things that we felt like weren't being used the last few years, so that we could add them to other things and make it more efficient. And that's about it. Questions?
I see under building equipment and maintenance and repair. It's here and it's also $10,000 in capital.
Yes. So we hold the capital line because we have a lot of big expenditures. As you can imagine, we have 3 firehouses. So a lot of big things like to break. So HVAC or any of that stuff, that's why there's like a sinking fund, just in case one of those larger items breaks. Or a well pump or anything like that. So that's why there's a capital and a regular budget. You'll see that the regular budget's going up. We have some repairs that have to be done. We have some mold issues on some ceiling tiles and stuff, and as you know, materials are just going up. So those are large price stuff that we have to pay for.
So what was the success behind getting more volunteers? What did you guys do?
Just treating everyone with a smile, I guess. You know, we're just opening the door. So we don't know what it is. A lot of members have a lot of prerequisites, so they're just moving to town. So we're just lucky that they want to be firefighters, or they already were firefighters in another town. So we've been very lucky on that. So
The hose and foam account
yep.
has increased. Isn't that kind of a static account?
No, so every year, obviously the price for that goes up, but we have the hose test every year. So under testing, it comes out of that, but then we lose a lot of hose. So the hose manufacturers have increased their prices, and that's why that account went up. So it's not static. It's very expensive to replace 100-foot 5-inch piece of hose. It's about $1,000. So to like $1 a foot. Or $10 a foot, somewhere about there. So it's very expensive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Rich Watts, Hampton Fire Marshal. It's nice to see everybody again this evening. This past year, the Fire Marshal's Office has once again made it a priority to get into as many of the apartments that we have within the town of East Hampton. We increased this year from 192 from the previous year to 211 this year. With that, that's 211 out of 346. Required inspections for the apartments. That's the biggest, in my opinion, where the biggest chance for loss of life is. People sleep in their apartments if they're not maintained with the current state fire codes. My goal is to make sure no one dies in a fire in an apartment building or multi-family home in this town. Steve Motto, with his wonderful additions to the tax base, keeps adding more apartments to the mix, so that number increases every year. Fortunate for us, that the apartments he's putting in are all sprinkled, which makes it a much safer environment to live in. The older multiple families we had down on Main Street, some of them are pretty scary, but we're working with the owners to get them as up to code as quickly and safely as possible. The state of Connecticut just instituted new codes this year, so the learning curve would change from the previous year, previous 2 years. And just as we get to know this code in 2024, a new set of codes will be coming out again. So it's always a constant learning curve in the fire marshal's office, but we're up for the challenge. Couple increases this year in the fire marshal budget. Looking for $4,700 for under supplies, materials, minor equipment. And that's for currently when we do fire investigations, we wear a N100 respirator, which is similar to what you see a painter use or body shop guy use. The problem with those is there's no positive pressure with those. So if you move or get sweaty, that slips. You start inhaling, you're inside investigating the fires, you're inhaling the particulates from that burned over in the current awareness of fire for cancer. There's a product out there that the state fire marshal's office has been using the past couple of years, and a lot of other local fire marshals have adopted it. It's basically a positive pressure respirator, so that when the face mask shifts on your face, you have constant airflow, so the air pushes out. It doesn't, you don't suck the particles in. Self-contained, runs on a little lithium-ion battery, well, good for 12 hours, help with filter in it. So that'll help us reduce the exposure to the carcinogens that are in the air. And the other increase is to replace one computer in the fire marshal's office that does not meet the requirements for the current operating Windows 11 system. Any questions?
No.
Okay, can we do the town center at the same time?
Sure.
Town center, the only change is a professional and technical service, $600. That's for the continuous maintenance of the testing of the fire pump down in the center of town. Everything else has pretty much stayed the same. Fortunately, we haven't had a real major fire. We've needed to use it, so fuels and really not coming to play this year. Any questions? Okay. Emergency management, we're fortunate this year. We didn't have any big storms come through, so we never had to open the emergency operations center. I consider that a good year. The CERT team continues to be active within the town. We've done the farms to table with the Lions Club. We've distributed food throughout the town to local residents. We've assisted with Chatham Health with running distribution of COVID home test kits, and we also did in the same weekend, at the same time, we also did a food drive in conjunction with the ambulance corps for the food bank in town. Always looking for more volunteers for the CERT team. We're currently at 24. Most of them, unfortunately, are older. We don't have too many young people on the roster. They're all retired, and sometimes the stuff gets heavy, and some new young blood would be appreciated. Sorry. One of my CERT members. Any questions? Like I have offered every year, if anyone ever wants to come out and see what I do when I go out and do inspection, you're more than welcome to join me. I'll come up with a nice, interesting one, and or you want to tell me to dig through a fire during the middle of the night, I'm more than happy to have you keep me company.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
It says me, but I'm gonna defer to everybody else in the room. I'll let Donald give you a rundown. This is one of the elephant in the room kind of things.
Yeah. All right, good evening. Thank you all for allowing us to be here tonight, present to you. I just want to start off kind of giving you brief rundown of what we do with our ambulance service and some of the events we provide to the town. For 70 years, East Hampton Ambulance has provided an ambulance service to the town of East Hampton, along with its residents, for Cobalt, Middle Haddam, and the Bureau of Haddam Neck, as we call it. We participate in many community events around town, from Touch a Truck events, Night to Shine with Hope Church. When they have the Tim Tebow Foundation co-host that with them. Old Home Day standbys, the Haddam Neck Fair standby, parade and fair coverage. We also do toy drives and food drives, as Rich Klotzberg just mentioned, collecting food for the holidays with Christmas and Thanksgiving to help out our community. We additionally provide free CPR classes and CPR classes at cost of what the card costs us for the daycares in town. It's one of those things that the daycare providers have to have a CPR and first aid class that's about 8 hours long to be able to work at those facilities. Additionally, we maintain and apply for the town's Heart Safe Community recognition through the state of Connecticut and the American Heart Association. So when you enter our town, you see that we're a heart safe community. That means that we have a certain amount of AEDs in the town and folks and residents who are trained in CPR to provide that care in the event of an emergency happening. So we make sure that we provide enough training to the community so that we can maintain those statistics every time we have to renew for it. Additionally, we hold first aid training to various groups such as the hiking groups in town. We provide CPR classes to them at cost or free. And we additionally hold multiple EMT recertification classes. We've held them for members of the fire department, our ambulance service, and other multiple area agencies that want to come out attend those trainings. We have instructors who are in-house. We additionally have an open house that's going to be at the end of April, on April 29th, where we're going to be showing the community kind of our ambulances, our equipment, and be able to provide hands-on CPR training to those individuals. We've also maintained and created a 344-page comprehensive local EMS plan for the town of East Hampton that encompasses both the all four, the fire, police, ambulance, and paramedic service. That covers mutual aid agreements, the mass casualty plans, along with the statewide fire disaster plan, and working with the Board of Education to make sure that the medical components in their plans and their emergency operation plans are proper. We've assisted the fire department and the police department with medical equipment over the years, and providing replacement equipment on medical calls. And we provide a future career opportunity for many residents in this town who move on to become physicians assistants, nurses, paramedics, firefighters, or go to medical school where they need patient care hours. And we're a local ambulance community where they can come home during the summer, during college, ride on an ambulance and be able to get those patient care hours while giving back to their community. Currently, we have 41 active members. Most of them are our residents or our neighbors in town. And we have mutual aid agreements with the towns of East Haddam, Colchester, and Marple. To date this year, we have 248 calls of service. Compared to last year, it was 253. The year before, 249. And in 2020, 205. Typically, we do about 1,000 to 1,100 calls a year. And each one of our members either have an EMR or EMT certification or a paramedic certification, but they have to practice as an EMT. Currently, the EMT program is about 180 hours, costs the individual about $1,400 to $1,600 out of their own money. There's about $300 in testing fees, and they have to do ride time on top of the class. From there, they go on calls once they've gotten their certification. And depending on the patient's needs or the patient's requests, calls can range from anywhere from an hour to 4 hours, depending on where you go. For example, the other night, I responded to East Haddam. We had to go to Hartford Hospital, and it was about a 2.5 hour call overall for a patient who requested it. So I just wanted to give, like I said, a brief rundown of our ambulance service and some more information. And certainly move on to the budget request to my treasurer and Bob Holdsworth, who is a consultant we hired. So.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bob Holdsworth. I'm president of the Holdsworth Group, and I'm the one that conducted the study of the ambulance service recently. Town council had asked the ambulance to do an assessment and come forward with a plan to provide continuing ambulance service and in fact better ambulance service. And that was something we presented, the budget request, which Dave will talk about in a few minutes, comes from that report, where we identified the fact that response times could improve, that there was not enough volunteers to guarantee that the first ambulance was staffed at all times. People were coming from home, which delays the response time. We suggested other ways to make the ambulance service even better. Now, you have a very good ambulance service. You've had a very good ambulance service for many years. The issue is that in the state of EMS around this state and around the country, we have volunteers that are not they are not pursuing the career in EMS. In the state of Connecticut, we've lost 7,000 people from the roles of EMTs and paramedics in the last 10 years. People who have left the profession, who have gotten to an age where they choose not to ride anymore. The pandemic did nothing to assist that. People decided that they would rather stay home and endanger their families, and they chose to leave the profession. In addition, there has been significant numbers of mergers of organizations where some of the commercial ambulance companies in the state who used to provide backup ambulance service and things along those lines have now been purchased by the hospitals. So Middlesex Hospital runs an ambulance service. Hunter's Ambulance in Middletown, which does backup, has been purchased by Hartford Healthcare. Aetna and ASM up in the Hartford area are owned partially by Hartford Healthcare or completely by them. What that has done, it has created a wage issue where people are fighting for the same people, and the wages have gone up substantially over the last few years. So we have kind of a perfect storm. We have people leaving the profession, leaving less people to provide service. We have economic factors that are driving the price of the people who are left up. And we also have significant supply chain issues. So, for example, the ambulance service is taking possession of a new ambulance shortly. I have another client who just placed an order for a new ambulance and was told it would be 18 months before they see it. So one of the things that's in the budget is to keep the third ambulance that's in town here as a redundant backup so that we can keep two ambulances in service. So the budget request, while large and potentially unexpected in this particular year, is designed to provide better service for the community, shorter response times, and to supplement the volunteers that are left. There's still training going on, there's still recruiting going on. The revenue shortfall that you can see in the budget, the plan that was put forth by the ambulance was to partner with the town to absorb 50% of the shortfall from ambulance funding, ambulance funds, and to ask the town to partner for the other half. So that there's a guaranteed ambulance 24 hours a day in the town, staffed for shorter response times. So that's what that budget request represents. While it looks large on the surface, what it truly does is improve the patient care in the community and takes the service that's been here for 70 years from very good to excellent. To meet the needs of the community that is growing and aging. So, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Dave, you want to go through it?
Well, I'm not sure what you have provided as far as what our budget is, pro forma budget for next year.
They just have the town's budget, so all they know is the 173.
That's all. Would it be all right if I passed out on what our budget is for next year?
Your own personal budget, so to speak?
Yeah, so where that number comes from?
While he's handing those out, did I hear you say that volunteers out of pocket expense of $1,400 for their training?
Yeah, so, for example, a recent EMT class that was held, it was $1,400 to take that class. And then there's an additional about $300 in testing fees for a practical assessment, along with a cognitive exam that you have to take in a computer. Our ambulance service did sponsor East Hampton residents, partially for that class, about $1,000 per student that applied. We were able to get 6 people out of that class to join our organization as a result, who have tested, passed their exams and applied. It's certainly a financial burden on a lot of people to be able to take that money out of pocket and get those skills.
That's why I was asking is,
Yeah.
just today's safe environment, I would imagine that's in part slowing down people volunteering if they've got to come up with cash out of their pocket. And go to the grocery store, your heating bill, or fill your car, there's not much left over.
Yeah, originally our scholarship was gonna be for $700 towards the class, half. So at least that the person had some way in the class. But we actually had a few people reach out, more than just one, saying that, you know, it's great that it's helping them towards the class, but it wasn't enough. So we were actually able to raise it to 1,000 and got a total of 16 people who graduated the class. I believe we handed out 10 scholarships. So we got 6 as a result so far who have applied.
What I passed out to you was the last 3 years, full years of our profit and loss statements. And the far right column is our proposed budget for 23-24. And when you go down to the bottom line, you'll see the significant difference between them, and which is the payroll line, which is about 2/3 of the way down the first sheet. You'll see EMT PIP payroll labor expense. And now it's the big change from the prior 3 years. And that's the fact that it's necessary for us to employ people greater than we did in the past. In the past, each person that was, if you want to call it, any volunteer had to volunteer for 24 hours before they got a stipend a month. So every month, these volunteers were spending 24 hours of their own time and then getting a stipend if they spent any more time than that. And some did not accept any funds whatsoever from the volunteers. So and I'm not sure how much you know about the ambulance service, but revenues do come to the ambulance service from calls that we receive monies from the insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, and very much from Medicaid. And that's where our revenues come from. All the expenses of the building, the ambulances, all the supplies are covered by these revenues. Over the last some years, we were fortunate enough to build up a kitty, if you want to call it that, or we have a balance sheet. And we have enough money to cover only 3 years if we continue the way we are right now by adding on our payroll. If the town was to join with us and pay half of what our expected loss would be, that should be able to get us through 7.5 years with no additional cost. The difference is what's going to happen, I think, and I see that the state's going to have to get involved at some point and provide an EMS service to all the towns, because it's not just us. Every town is in the same situation. Two of the larger cities, they hire a firm to do it. Others have volunteers. Others have a situation like us where they're moving from volunteers to a paid staff. So at some point, this may not continue. This may be taken up by the state, but there's no way to determine that now. Some of the fees, there are bills before the legislature this year to increase Medicaid fees for ambulance service. Hopefully that'll take place. We can build some revenue, but we don't know that yet. There are bills, but we don't know if there's gonna pass or not. It's a lot to digest, the budget. But if you have any questions now or in the future, you certainly can get a hold of me. I'll be glad to help.
And what Dave just said is something that everyone needs to understand. This is not an East Hampton issue by any stretch of the imagination. This is a state and national issue. EMS this year at the legislature has been one of the hot topics because everybody is going forward and explaining the same exact issue to their their finance and boards of selectmen or town councils. To give you an example, and this is where some confusion comes in, so you know where the revenue comes from. The authorized rate by the state of Connecticut, which sets the rates, by the way, for an ambulance this year, the base rate for retail pricing is $813. For a basic life support ambulance. It goes up if there's other services provided by the paramedics. Medicare only will allow $425, of which they pay 80% and the patient pays 20%. So the maximum amount that the ambulance, any ambulance service in the state can collect from Medicare is $425. If you pick up a Medicaid patient, the maximum you can collect is $267. The remainder has to be written off as a contractual allowance. To give you a sense of where that is related to East Hampton specifically, 60% of the patients transported in this town are Medicare patients. Almost, well, 19% of the patients transported in this town are Medicaid. So 79% of the patients are paid at a rate discounted more than 50% of the state's retail rate. That is true across the board, but every town has different demographics. Those are yours specifically. This is what any ambulance service providing coverage to your town is facing. It's a matter of how you have to staff it. So while there are 1,100 calls in town, the way that revenue is generated is not by the call, but by the transport to a hospital. So the ambulance has to staff for every request that comes in through 911, through their services and through mutual aid services. Because not every ambulance, there's no ambulance that can cover all the calls. My background, which you may not know, I've been in this business for over 40 years. I used to run 2 of the ambulance services at different times in the city of Hartford, where we handled 25,000 calls a year per service. None of us could handle every single call that comes along. So mutual aid is very important. But getting to the patient and getting as efficient as possible in transporting the patient is also important. East Hampton has to staff and have an ambulance ready, whether the call comes or not. They only generate revenue from the calls that they actually transport, which is about 800. So 300 times, almost once a day, they are going to a call, providing service, providing an assessment, and not being able to generate revenue from that, but it still costs them. The plan that we proposed to the council, which is representative of the budget request in front of you, was to stabilize the system for as long as possible, given the resources and what we know, which is what Dave was talking about. We believe this plan, partnering 50-50, will allow 7 to 7.5 years. The things that we need to get through that we don't know, Dave alluded to, the state may or may not jump in with additional support or additional services. We don't know what's going to happen in 2024 with the election and the subsequent policies that will come out at both state and federal levels after the election, which all impact healthcare across the board. So the plan was, let's stabilize this as partners for as long as we possibly could, rather than just say in 3 years, we'll have a bigger problem. And let's get through all of that. That gives us time to do a lot of things with our neighbors, to see where their legislation goes, to see what new policies come out in 2025 and beyond. That's why the budget request is what it is. Better service, quicker response times, stabilize it for as long as possible as partners.
I have a question on the budget. The line item, the EMT PIP, it seems to be a pretty flat rate, 134,000, 149, 141. And then this budget year jumps to 476.
Correct. That's,
So what's driving that?
that's the paid staff that's being
Okay.
projected for the next year versus the volunteers that we've had over the last 3 years.
And how many paid staff is that?
I'm sorry.
How many paid staff?
About right now, we're gonna have. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, so I apologize. I can certainly get them to you. But at least from preliminarily with me working on it today, looks about 20 people. There's an additional 4 that we are hiring to start on April 3rd, an additional 3 we're gonna start on May 1st. And those are gonna be per diem only employees.
So I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. You said 20 paid staff with 3 hiring 3 and then 4, so that doesn't add up to 20.
Yeah, so currently, we have 41 members. Our members have been given the opportunity to become per diem employees. Obviously, given over the last few years, the economic climate and just everything affecting time. A lot of our employees that we've lost over the years have gone to better paying jobs. So by employees transitioning from volunteers to per diem employees, they'll be able to, now be able to get a revenue to be able to provide to their families, food on the table. So the current members that we have that are transitioning to per diems as of April 2nd, and then we're hiring an additional 7 from the outside who have not been part of our agency before.
And still maintaining some volunteers. There are still some people that would wish to stay as volunteers, so that we're not paying as much as it could be.
Correct.
So I'm kind of confused. So the goal is ultimately about 20 per diem employees? Is that?
Our goal is to be able to provide 2 people, at least on the schedule 24/7, between a mixture of per diem, volunteer hybrid employees.
So how many would be per diem, I guess? I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, about 27 right now are being per diems, so.
Slightly, it's gonna be about a 45-50. It's gonna be about a 45-55 split by the time we're done.
Hoping to keep everybody as part-time, not full-time employees.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
We're budgeting for the assumption, which has been borne out in other departments, as well as what we've seen from our organization. There are some people who want to move to per diem. There are some people who want to stay as volunteers. We are still actively recruiting and training volunteers so that we can keep that budget as low as possible. But we have to budget for the very strong possibility that we won't get all of those volunteers. Which is the reason we need paid staff now, is because volunteers are not participating as much as they did before. So we have to be prepared to staff the ambulance to be available.
Any other questions?
All I gotta say is it's public safety. Number one thing in town, you gotta support. So I think it's a good idea for them to look forward for the next 7 years, and I support their budget.
Thank you. Thank you.
No question? Anyone? No? All set, thank you.
Thank you for your time and your questions.
Dave, over here. Do you have another one of those budgets? Oh, sure. I can have it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, how do you want to handle the rest? Ask me questions, or do you want me to go and touch each one of them? I can tell you,
Pages, I don't have them on the top of my head.
Sure. So animal control is on page 53, probably 54 by the time you get to the numbers.
That one, if I remember correctly, is pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. I added a little bit there. 2 things to drive that. We have, of course, the agreement with East Haddam that has a 3% increase. And we put a little bit of money in there I think Jeff has it under extraordinary items, maybe. I was asked by the animal control officer to provide a little bit of money to deal with cats. They're starting to have a problem with cats and having them in their possession. So he's been working with one of his assistant ACOs, and they're dealing with cats and getting them spayed and neutered and back out into the world, and we bear some costs.
Some of the feral cats.
Right,
Okay.
cats and other varieties that they get their hands on that are not canines. Which is the focus. Animal control is focused on canines. Less so on wild animals, just so you know, less so on wild animals. We get deep involved for those.
Right.
That's kind of the status there.
Next is,
Economic Development Commission might come up next.
Yeah.
I think in the order. So, Economic Development Commission, of course, as you know, is sort of the volunteer board and commission that focuses on business development, business retention, a little bit on tourism. Their budget doesn't change this year. They sometimes use that really well and have some pretty aggressive programming. Sometimes they end up not being so much. They, as you can see, have spent in some years all of their funding, and some years not. So this is 4,000 and change for them to undertake various programmings to.
pretty much the budget hasn't changed, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next is redevelopment.
Brownfields Redevelopment Agency, a couple pages farther back.
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ted, he's on that, isn't he?
On economic
Yes, he is.
development, some of the years we don't use a lot of the money, and some years, like Jake said. We've had a hard time keeping volunteers on our committee. We were down to 4, yeah, we're supposed to have 7. So in some of those years, we have lower participation volunteers for the commission. So that's one of the reasons why we see we don't use most of our budget. So anything that's there probably will be the same cycle. And it's just ideas that the commission has together and votes on, and we do it. I just wanted to throw that in about volunteerism.
Nobody's hanging around for this.
I know. Should we be offended? I don't know.
Maybe.
We have the chief.
That's that we do. If there's nothing else on economic development, the next one you'd have is a couple pages farther back in the budget. That's the redevelopment agency. As I started to say, that's Brownfields Redevelopment Agency. You know, as you can imagine, our history is a manufacturing town. We got a few brownfields downtown. We own some of those. And their focus is to get them redeveloped, cleaned and redeveloped. So their focus right now, they don't have a lot of dollars that they use, but they try to do a lot of work through grants. So they have actually an application into the federal government, EPA, for a grant of, it's either $500,000 or $700,000, I can't recall right now. For funding to do some, as you know, the town took over 13 Summit, so to get that testing done and evaluation done there, so we know what the cleanup is there. We know that we have a little bit more cleanup to do on 13 Watrous Street, and a little bit more to do on 3 Walnut, so they've got some funds in there to get those new numbers tested and know what our next steps are there. They also are looking at some backup grants at this point to try and make sure that they get those dollars. And we're working toward, we now know the cost of cleaning 1 Watrous Street, which is the building on the end, right up at Summit Street. You'll notice we took part of that off. That was to secure it so that we could continue to ensure at least the physical property, so that if something happened and we had to burn it, or dispose of it, we would have funds to do that. But anyway, they're focused on finding grant funds and assisting us, that is assisting my office and land use as we try to get through RFPs to see if we can find somebody to be interested in partnering with us on those properties. So the complicated process. We're fortunate on that particular board to have a couple of people that are professionals in that industry again. And that's been really beneficial.
Yeah.
Really good folks there.
Now, I know we're not doing Middletown library tonight, but I noticed in her write-up, she was looking for a parking lot to be to be fixed.
Mhm.
Has anyone in town, like from Public Works, gone to look at it? Because she's asking for money, but we don't know how much. So if
Matt
I,
has been there. Matt has been down, Matt Walsh, the Public Works Director, has been down and been in that area with her. There's a variety of issues down there. So if we want to price that, we can do that, but of course, that's private property and we tend not to do those things on private property. He will work with them on making sure that the
I just wanted to know for my own, have we looked at it? Is it something we're responsible for or not?
Yeah, so there is stormwater drainage issues down there that we're trying to address. I think that Matt will be working on that as well. I like to refer to stormwater drainage problems as sins of the past. We deal with it when you talk about Lake Pocatapog, we deal with it all over town. You asked the question about Long Hill. Those are sins of the past, where the method of dealing with stormwater in the past was get it to the river, get it to the lake as fast as we can. And we're paying the price for that now as storm events have changed and our infrastructure has deteriorated and our development has increased. We're paying the fiddler, so to speak, for all those sins. Middle Haddam is, of course, an old part of town and a lot of sins exist down there. So I know Matt has had some focus on Blacksmith and Schoolhouse and all of those streets down there. And I know that he's been in communication with Donna and the folks at the library to see if there's things that we can do to help. Okay,
All right. I think that's that.
Historic District, of course, is just funds to continue to operate them and make sure that they can have secretarial services and make sure they publish their stuff and whatnot.
Well, I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. What, you ready?